Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well as always, staying happy and healthy and all that good stuff. I have a different story for you this week. I'm not sure if this could be a cryptid or if it's a spirit or what this is. So it's from Costa Rica. So I'll jump in a second here. Make sure to strap in and like the video and subscribe and comment and all that spicy stuff. And yeah, let's get into her. Thank you for watching. So this happened a while ago, and has caused a series of strange events ever since. I have been hesitant of ever sharing what happened because I wanted it to end and not allow it to hold any power over me, but after a most recent event, I feel like I have to purge this from me. I've been a long time lurker and I've never posted here before, so I would try and do my story, but forgive me if I screw it up. First, a little backstory. Back in 2004, I studied wildlife conservation in the jungle. This was in jungle environments such as Costa Rica, and I really enjoyed studying birds there. I was and still am skeptical of most paranormal stuff, even after some of the stuff I've encountered out there. This would become apparent later. After I finished my studies, I returned back to England and thought more about my next move, and I decided eventually to return to Costa Rica to see more brightly colored birds. So I found a house/farm that was kind of like a house-sitting deal in a remote part of central Costa Rica, thinking this would be perfect for studying a different class of bird, as I had studied wet lowland birds and this was much higher in elevation. So I planned with the owner of the farm to stay there for 3 months, looking after the property in between my personal sightseeing plans and studies. I am told that there is a small family that lives close by the farm that will oversee my stay and do any major repairs if needed to the farm, and I was to meet them for the keys on arrival. This place was literally in the middle of nowhere. The bus from the nearest town took about 2 hours to arrive at a small shack shop, and from there I had to walk another 2 hours to the farm. The family, though, were extremely nice. Poor local farmer types with 2 young boys, and they were very warm and welcoming. They all walked with me to the farm, which was about a half-mile away, and showed me around. My Spanish was not the best, to be honest, but they all had thick accents, but we managed to laugh it off and communicated fine. One thing that I thought was strange, though, was that they kept insisting that I always lock the doors, even when in the house. Being in the middle of nowhere, it seemed a little weird, but I thought I'd better be safe than sorry, I guess, and follow their advice. So the first few weeks that I was there passed by with 0 problems. The 2 young boys would come up to the house on odd occasions and play Jenga or ask about my day and just kind of hang out. They were good kids, and it was good to just sit and chat to someone after a day or so of isolation. One evening, the older boy saw my bird book and said that the guy that wrote that book lived not far from there, and now he had passed away. His property had become a bird retreat which allowed visitors. Hearing this, I naturally wanted to visit the place and explore around. So I packed a bag, and one early morning I set out to visit the park. It was about 6 miles away. Walking around the park was great. There was not a person in sight, so a lot of wildlife everywhere. I decided to follow one of the smaller trails, and about 30 minutes in, the usual sounds of the jungle seemed to get a little quieter. Not stop or anything, just not as loud, so I figured I must just be getting into a clearing or a deeper part of the jungle, and I just carried on. And I did eventually find a clearing, and in the clearing was a large boulder with carvings all over it. No one had mentioned it, and the carvings were all odd. It looked like they had been made a long time ago. It looked like it was maintained, as there was no leaf litter around it, and the clearing was well maintained. So I was thinking that I had just stumbled on some picnic site place that used to be a tribal area or something like that. So I took a few pictures. I'll post them here. I took a few pictures and I sat on the rock and ate my lunch. After getting back to the farm, I realized just how exhausted I was. And to me, being this exhausted was a little unusual. I was a lot fitter back then, and a day like that should not have affected me, or at least I didn't think it should. So I put it down to the heat of the day, and I had a shower and went to bed. That night I had some of the most vivid dreams I've ever had. The dream started with me walking by the farm on one of the trails, only to be greeted by someone that seemed to be dressed as a hay bale, and this hay bale seemed to be knotted at the very top with straw, and he babbled to me to follow him. I did so, and there was this small campfire. I sat by the fire and he began to dance around, singing to me in English. Every now and then he would stop dancing and it would look like that he turned kind of into a normal hay bale. Then he would jump up again, I guess, and carry on swaying and dancing around me as he sung. What he sung about I can't remember. Even at the time I struggled to recall any of it, but I know it was good things, or at least I thought so at the time. The next morning I was so surprised about my dream that I decided to draw a picture of him and thought nothing more of it. A few days later the two boys came out to the farm for a game of Jenga and a chat. I told them about the rock and showed them the pictures, and both their faces dropped. I asked them what was up. They said I should not have sat on the rock, and I definitely shouldn't have eaten on it. It's a sacred rock and should be respected. Thinking that this is some kind of local superstition, I apologized to them and thought that was the end of the story. But after a few games of Jenga, the younger brother had seen my notebook and asked if he could look at it. I gave it to him, and as he opened it, it fell on the page of the drawing that I made. He screamed and threw the book down on the floor. This was the first time he had ever acted in such an odd way. Both were very polite and respectful. I was shocked at the fact that he just threw the book on the floor. I asked him what was up, and he said, "You've seen him." His older brother, picking up the book, looked at the picture and asked, "When did I see him?" and his eyes were filled with fear. I was so confused and said, "Oh, it was just a dream I had a few nights ago." They both looked at each other and then thanked me for the drinks and then left, not saying much more. By now I was wondering what the hell was going on. I eventually just kind of brushed it off as some serious farmer shit. I went to bed and slept until at some point in the night I heard some strange scraping noises that woke me up. I cannot describe the sounds. They sounded like branches cracking or flexing, leaves rustling, and definitely mud squelching. Thinking about the door being locked put me at ease, and although it kept me awake for a while, I put it down to a tapir or coatis, I don't know how to say that, out at night and fell asleep. My dream that night was dark as hell. In my dream, I looked out the window only to be greeted by the sight of what I can only describe as an Ent from Lord of the Rings or something, and a very tall, thin, tree-like creature. It had these long arms and legs, and a curved back and a long head that was looking at me as it walked around the farm. I did as all kids do, and it hid under the covers thinking it would not see me and go away. The next morning I drew the thing down in my book while eating breakfast. I had not long finished my breakfast and the whole family came up the path to the house. This was the first time since being there that I had a visit that early and by the whole family. Thinking it was odd, I went out to greet them. But when I went out, they looked very serious, and they said hello, not really even half as jovial as normal. I was wondering what was wrong, and I asked them, "Is everything okay?" The older boys said that they came up to see my drawing. Thinking, "Oh, okay, this is really weird." I invited them into the house where my book was and my latest drawing on display, and they all gasped. The mom kept saying, "Oh Dios, oh Dios." The father looked more closely at the picture without touching the book, and then the kids said show them the other picture. So I picked up the book, and as I did so, they all stepped back as if I was holding something powerful. I opened the page on the Hayman picture and offered it out for them to see, but they stepped back again, not even wanting to touch it. The mom now was furiously crossing herself, and the man said, "That's the shaman. He visited you." He then asked where he took me in my dream. I mentioned that we walked along the path just beside the house. He said that we need to visit the site and place an offering to him. Thinking, okay, I'll just keep the family happy. I'll go along with this and see what happens. So walking along the path, all of a sudden I see this stuff on the ground. It was about the size of a basketball hoop, and it's not paint. It looked like the clay was actually a different color to the rest of the ground. The dad said that you have to place an offering in the ring for the shaman to pick up. At this point, I'm a little suspicious. I tried to remember that if that loop thing had always been there, but I thought I better just go with it, and I went back to the house and got a small bottle of Florida Canna rum I had recently brought and put there, thinking that if the shaman does not pick it up, the farmer will, and all will be good either way. As we walked back, the smile started to come back to their faces a bit, and everything was starting to seem okay again, until the dad stopped suddenly, looking down at the ground, and then looking around, keeping his eyes on the ground. I was looking around wondering what he had seen, so I looked down to see these weird holes in the soft clay path and deeper holes in the bush. When he saw that the whole family and I were following his lead, he quickly stood straight up and said it's time that we went home. Thinking to myself, what a friggin' morning that I had. I said goodbye to them and I just went back to the house. Now, later that same day, the dad came back up the path toward the house, and seeing him I went out to greet him, and he had with him a tool bag. I was thinking that he was here to do some repair somewhere, and I asked if I could help. He said, "You have to do this, I cannot fix your problem." This is when I kind of realized that I'm in the middle of nowhere with a very suspicious or superstitious family, and I got a little freaked out. It was the first time I had felt uneasy about everything, and with the realization of how vulnerable I was, especially as the father's demeanor was completely different now that he was not with his family. He told me the shaman had sent the tree creature to keep an eye on me, and that he must have broke in somewhere to get on the land, and I have to fix the fence. He said that the holes in the clay were its tracks, and that he had seen them earlier in the morning, and we need to walk around the perimeter of the farm to find the broken part of the fence. Sure enough, after an hour or so we found it, and I had to fix it as he stood there and told me how to do it and explained everything to me. Half of me was starting to believe in all this stuff, and the other half was starting to just freak out at how serious they were all taking it. Either way, I was starting to freak out over it all. The next few weeks went by without any incident, but my imagination was running wild the entire time. I found myself jumping at the slightest sounds and not wanting to walk far into the jungle. I started to feel really isolated and aware that anything could happen to me out here. So I decided to pay a visit to the shrine where it all started to try and put it all to rest. I took some fruit and another small bottle of rum, and I went there and placed them together in front of the rock. I don't know if that was ever the right thing to do, but it gave me a small respite of the anxious feeling I had. After a week or so, I had another dream of the tree creature. This time it was scratching on the window, this time trying to get my attention. That thing didn't get the memo that me and the shaman were back on good terms. So this is part of what has been going on over the last 16 years, and is nearly over. I will find as many related pictures as possible, and I'll post them in here. I don't care if people believe this or not, as I know there are so many stories posted out there that are just pure BS. The farm and what happened there are just the beginning, and I wish I could go back and change it all, as it changed my whole life. So, back to the story. I was freaked out by this thing. I started to spend more and more time in the local town, going to internet cafes and trying to find other places to go. I was realizing that my best option would most probably be in a higher populated area for a while, and I decided to go to Bocas del Toro, just across the border in Panama, for some much needed party time and socializing. Then, after a week or so, I could go back to the farm and I could put all this behind me and I could feel refreshed. So that's exactly what I did. But when I came back and paid a visit to the family, they were still happy to see me and stuff, and it felt good to tell somebody about my adventures over there. But after I left their house and walked towards the farm, that feeling of dread came back like a thick cloud. It seemed like I had not been away, and the air seemed hard to breathe. That's when I knew I had to leave, and hopefully put it all behind me. Little did I realize that I didn't do that. So, what did y'all think of that story? It's a little different from any of the other stories that I've found, and I'll post the pictures that are here with the story. And yeah, if you liked it, then please like and subscribe and comment and all that stuff. But what do you think of the story? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake, or somewhere in between? Anyways, I hope y'all have a good night, day, weekend, holiday, whenever you see this, and hopefully you'll be there in the next one. Thank you for watching, and thank you for pulling up a stump. I'll catch you later.